Hello everyone, welcome to SQLite tutorials. In last part we covered how to convert SQLite data into CSV file, and then also we have seen how to convert CSV file data inside the CSV file into SQLite database. Okay, in this part we are going to do something similar, but this time we are going to look at how to do the same process with an XML file. Okay, so these are the two methods we created in last tutorial for CSV file. This one was converting to CSV file, and this method here convert from CSV back to SQLite. And in our bin debug folder, we have, this was our original database, mysqldb.db. This was where we started off with our SQLite tutorials. And then in last tutorial we created peopledb and mysqlite db CSV. Okay. All right. So let me open the database. I think right now the last one we used was peopledb, right? If I go to my data context, peopledb was the last one we worked with. So let's check out peopledb and check the data inside the database. We should have 3 records, 3 rows, and here we have it. Okay, so we are going to convert this data into an XML file and then do the same process in reverse direction. Okay, so having said that, let's get started. To start off, I'm going to minimize these two methods here and comment out the last method we used up here. Okay, so I'm going to create a new method called a static void. Let's call this convert SQLite to XML. Okay. So open and close our curly braces and start coding. Alright, so first we are going to create an instance of X document. Make sure you have system.xml.link namespace. If you don't have it, just as you type it, and this one doesn't show the word X, the type name doesn't show the correct color, you can do Control dot and bring in the namespace, the using statement. So let's keep going. So X document, let's call this variable xdoc equals new X document. Okay. Alright, next I'm going to create the root element. So it's going to be type of X element. I'm going to call this X root and new X element. I'm going to give it a name. Let's call the root element root. That's simple, or we can do people if you want to. It's the top and bottom nodes. Okay, the main node or main element. Alright, and then we want to add that to our xdoc. Alright, so xdoc.add xroot. Okay. Next, we are going to read our database and loop through the data. So I'm going to be using the using statement again. Var ctx equals new data context, open close curly braces, that didn't work too well. I'm going to redo this. Okay. Alright, so in here, first I want to create the person element or the tag. So another X element. Let's call this person. equals new X element, and we're going to name this tag or node person. Okay. And then the next node is going to be the values. Well, we need the ID, right? We need the ID and name tags. So ID and name. So we need two more elements. So X element, let's call this ID equals new X element. Alright, this one, first we need to give a name to the element, or the node, the X node. And then we're going to pass in the value. And the value, well, we don't have it yet, so I'm going to leave this right here and create our loop. This should have been inside the loop. These two lines of code should be inside the loop. So I'm going to do a control KS. Let me see. I never tried this with the for each loop, but let's see if it works. If not, we have to do it manually. For each, there it is. Actually, there is one. Okay. Alright, so for each, let me scroll down a little bit. So for each var, let's call this p in ctx dot people. Okay, as we loop through, we're creating X elements. Now I can say the value of this the content of this element, it's going to be p.id. Right? Likewise, we're going to need another one for the name. And let's create a new X element, and the name of the node is name, and the value is p.name. Okay, then we are going to add the ID and name to our person node. So person dot add ID, and then person dot add name. Oops. And finally, well, actually not finally, and then we're going to say xdoc dot root dot add person. So we add in the person node with including the two child nodes to root element. Okay, and then finally, now we can say finally, I think, save the document. So xdoc dot save, and we'll give it a name, file name. I'm going to call this SQLite 2 xml.xml. Okay, so if you did correctly, it should create a XML file in here in this directory. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna actually do a console.writeline over here. Let's say p.name edit so each time it adds a record to the file, it's going to print that out on the screen, and then we'll know that it's working properly. Okay, so let's call this method and see what happens. So convert SQLite to XML. Okay, I'm gonna build this first and then run it. Okay, the build succeeds. Let's run this. Okay, so we got 3 records added to our XML file. Let's go double check. So I'm gonna open the folder, and here we have our XML file, and there you have it. So we have our root elements and 3 person elements or child nodes with ID and names. Okay, so this was SQLite to XML. Okay, and the next method will be XML from XML to SQLite. Okay, all right, so let's create another method, static void. Let's call this XML to SQLite. Okay. Alright, so here we are going to first read the XML file. So let's create a new variable. Let's call this var xdoc equals xdocument dot load, and we'll pass in the file name, which is SQLite to XML.xml. That's our file name that we created down here. Okay, let's make sure we SQLite to XML.xml. I think that should be good. Alright, next I'm gonna convert these element into person objects. So var people, I'm gonna call this equals xdoc dot root dot descendants person. So I'm getting all person nodes, and then select. Here I'm going to say x is going to be a lambda expression. I think I have covered this in our link to XML series, but if you guys new to this, you can go back and check them out. There's a lot of good information in there that can help you out. Alright, so new person. Okay, I'm going to say ID equals x dot element ID dot value, and then name equals x dot element name dot value. Okay, let's close this out. Just a small error here. That's because our person class or object is looking for int. We are sending string in, so I'm going to convert this to a int. So I'm going to say int.parse. Whoops. Int dot what's going on? I think this machine is downloading Windows updates again. Every time it does that, it starts acting up. Damn updates. Well, not that it's bad, but kind of it's annoying. Okay, so we are parsing the int, the ID element to, the value coming from the ID element to an int, and we are getting the storing all the objects in the people variable. Okay. Alright, next, once we read that, we can say for each. Actually, you know what? Let me create an instance of the context, the data context. So data context ctx equals new data context. Okay. Alright, we're creating the instance. So now I can say for each var person in people dot, well, actually in people. All right, we're gonna loop through it and then add to the data context. ctx dot people dot add person. Okay, I think that should be it. And then we'll close the ctx. Actually, ctx dot save changes, and then ctx dot dispose. Okay, now this is going to, we want to create a new database, but we already have one here, so I'm going to change this to, I don't want to override it, so I'm going to change this to XML2 SQLite DB. Okay, so we don't have that file in here yet. Once we run this, it should create the file and add the data to the database. You know what, actually I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna add another object to this, another person object, so it's a little different too, the value wise. So I'm gonna edit this. I don't want the notepad, the WordPad, that kind of doesn't work really well. So I'm going to open this with Notepad. Alright, so I'm going to add another person. I'm going to copy and paste this. Change the ID to 4, the last one. And let's change this to Jane Smith. Or Jill Smith. Okay, let's save this. So we have 4 records in our XML file now, and this should create a database and add all 4 records for us. Okay, let's go back here, let's build it and run it. Of course I have to call this method, right? Let's comment this one out and call this one. Convert XML to, well, XML. What did I call? Oh, we didn't use a convert. Jesus, let me change this to convert XML to SQLite so it's consistent with other methods. Okay. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna do the same thing with the other one. I'm gonna do a console.writeLine up here, and we'll say p.name is person.name added, so we know that the person was added. Okay, let's run this, see what happens. Okay, we have 4 records showing added, and we got an exception. Okay, let's see what's going on. No such table person. Yep, sure. Okay, we didn't run the, since we created a new database, we're creating a new database. Let's see if database created. Right here, actually it was created, but we don't have a table in there. Remember, we had to run a SQL query. I think it was in this one, so I gotta run this query to create the table. So I'm gonna copy this line from here and paste over here. right after creating data context. Okay, I'm gonna delete that database that was just created, this one here. It's empty anyway. Okay, that should take care of it. So we're creating the person table inside our database, new database, and adding 2 fields, ID and name. Okay, let's run this again. We were this close, but okay, this should be, I think, good this time. Okay, let's check again. Okay, database created. Let's open the database and make sure we have 4 records in our database. And there you have it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so that's it for SQLite for now. If you have any questions, please drop in the comment section. Other than that, until next time, have a good one. Take it easy.